Hey there, everybody. It's Bill McDonald, the reading and writing doctor here, and I wanted to make sure that everybody who has some confusion about the test, about all the different kinds of questions and the way they're worded and when they have prompt and when they're questions or statements, I came up with an idea using my graphic organizer of a train to train you and your staff and your students on how to differentiate between the different types of questions that you could be asked using the 5 vowels of the alphabet: B, A, E, I, O, and U. Every single one of them is about a purpose of writing, not genre, but your students responding to genres in reading questions. And it really also applies to math questions and all the other grade levels and subjects that have constructed responses. So if you have tested grade level students, I want you to think of the 5 vowels of the alphabet, and I'm going to give you some words that will help you and your students connect to the different purposes of writing in a response to a question. So I've already done it for you. And for those of you who have the advanced folders, I don't think any of you have my most updated version. Even you Crest teachers don't have it because I made a few more changes to make it even better. So when you look at this train, they train you how to use a graphic organizer that works from left to right instead of top to bottom, because as you see here, the red, yellow, green, red of the train works from left to right. On my writing folder, whether you're doing expository or argumentative, the red, yellow, green, and red work from top to bottom. So whether you think vertically or horizontally, either way can work for you using a train or a stick map. So what we see first is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman starts with a W and a W. So the first thing that your students have to think about when they're writing is Wonder Woman. The W is, what is the purpose of my writing? Red light. What is the prompt, the topic, or the question? Because depending on what subject and what type of question, uh, they're going to be responding to topics or teaks or a prompt or a question. So the vowels that we're going to focus on are A, E, I, O, and U. All right. So the prompt, anytime it says prompt, you're going to notice that the answers are going to be open-ended. In other words, either short answer, extended essay responses, and some editing and revising are in a slightly open-ended format. When you think about the word topic, a lot of your kids are getting the answers to questions wrong because they're not focusing on the topic of the question. Topic being, what are the key words? What is the focus? What is the subject? Is it a who, what, when, where, why, which, or how question? Don't give me a who if they're asking for a what. Don't give me a what if they're asking for a who. The last one, whenever it's a question, it's never going to be an extended essay topic because all the extended essays are in the form of statements. And some of the editing and revising are not in the form of questions, they're in the form of statements. So when you look at the newly released samples from the summer and from this fall, if you happen to see them on the 3rd through 10th grade, you'll notice that some are in regular multiple choice in editing and revising, and some are in open-ended format. So I'll make my way through the alphabet here using the engine, the yellow train, the green, and the red. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. 2, 3, 4, 5 conventions thrive. Okay. That C that's right there stands for 3 things: conclusion, conventions, content. The B stands for the body. And if you take a close look at a B, it's technically 2 capital D's just linked together. So what I want you to think about when you're trying to do extended essay responses for either opinion, argumentative, or informative expository is that you have to develop a combination of the evidence and the way you explain it. They both have to be developed if you want to get to 3 land. Okay. All right. So let's start over here with the beginning at the A. Some of the purposes of writing is they're just going to ask a question. Red light. Think of that left eyeball there. And all your students have to do is answer the question with multiple choice format. That's going to be 75% of the test or less, but close to that. Some of the answers of constructed responses, which are these here. All of these boxes on the left-hand side, the 75 regular multiple choice will be an A, B, C, D format. But then there's all these other 1-point questions in reading, math, writing, social studies, science, algebra. They can ask any of these kind of questions. And for those of you who don't teach reading, there's anywhere between 7 or 8 or 9 or possibly 10 of these questions that are going to show up instead of just being multiple choice. They've got to answer a question in this format. So make sure you're using a program that allows you to see answers in that way. Okay. So something real important to consider is do not spend 75% of your time on open-ended or constructed responses or short answer when 75% of the questions are still going to be multiple choice. Next letter. A, the answer and short answer. We said it's going to be open-ended. So the A, the O, and the E. The open-ended response, what they're going to look for is the answer for the first point. So if you think of this, the answer and the evidence is going to be the way to get a 2. How do you go from the red light to the yellow light? You have to have the answer to the question and the evidence. And the reason that I have examples there is the entire passage is evidence, but you only want to use the examples of the evidence, the passage, that actually answer the question that's being asked. And if that happens, then they get a 2. So if your students have no answer, but they have the evidence, then they'll get only 1 point because only the yellow light is there. If the students have the opposite, there's the evidence but no answer, or the answer but no evidence, they'll get 1 point. And again, the answer has to relate to the evidence has to relate to the answer, and both of them have to relate to the question that's being asked. And all short answer questions are going to be in open-ended format with a 475 character limit. Another letter, I. Informative, expository. That's one of the extended essay formats. I for informative, E for expository. So in the introduction, more than likely, if you teach elementary, you're going to have to give a central idea statement, which is, if you notice his eyeballs, most of the ones that were given, they asked your kids in the statement about 2 different ideas. And so if there are 2 ideas in the prompt, then your students need to give 2 ideas in their central idea statement for elementary, their controlling idea statement for middle school, or their thesis statement for high school. So keep in mind the letters EXP, expository. Expository means to explain information. So once they give the statement, once again, just like for a 2, they want to start with 2 land. They can give the evidence either with quotes or without quotes, but they've got to decide which examples from the text are going to be the best ones that will support my central idea, controlling idea, or thesis that was about the topic. And your kids can basically get a 2 with that. It's just choosing your examples wisely, because some kids will try to highlight the entire passage and call that evidence. That would be examplatory. If you have lots of examples, but you're not explaining any of them, then you're not going to be able to get to the next point, because it says for a 3 to develop your ideas in detail, but also that your word choices are effective. It also says that for the introduction and the conclusion have to be present. So if I hold my hands like this, and I'll do it this way, do it this way like this, okay, this way. All right. If that's your introduction and the middle fingers are your body, where you take examples and you explain and you explode them of evidence, then you have an ending. Well, it says that in order to get a 2 or a 3 for the red, yellow, green part, and this red part at the end, there has to be an introduction and a conclusion. They just have to be present in order to get the 2. In order to say, we're going to give you a 3 for your content, it has to be that you're, so if you think present has 2 syllables, you can only get a 2 on the development organization part if the introduction and the conclusion are just present, the ending. But if you want to get a 3, it says that your introduction and your conclusion have to be effective, 3 syllables. So one of the E's that you have to remember that I didn't write down is, how do I have an effective introduction and conclusion? Well, what I suggest is make sure you're exploding the essay with vocabulary, because it says that your word choices are specific and well chosen. So if you all you're doing is writing words from the prompt over and over again, the topics or the questions, you're repeating yourself a lot, that's not going to be very effective. And so you want to try your best to get some kids to be effective, to be reflective, to think of other ways to write things, the ideas that they choose, the evidence they choose, the way they explain it, because effective, 3 syllables, means that you're not just going to have an idea, the evidence, and develop it, but you're going to develop it, the entire process, introduction, body, conclusion, with higher choice vocabulary, unique approaches to responding, making good connections, not just transitioning between ideas, but making good connections between ideas and the way you write them. So that gets you to 3 land. Yeah, another AEIOU. The last thing on an informative expository essay, is there an ending? 2 syllables. 2 sentences, possibly, like your shoes, you have 2 of them, that bring closure to the essay. Closure, ending. Or you could say, let me call it a conclusion. The last letter in the alphabet is Z. So you could say conclusion. Then you take your paper to the ER, because you can only get 3 points on the extended essay for development and organization, but you can also get 3 points, two more points, either the 4th or the 5th point, or 0 points on the ability to take your paper to the ER, to the emergency room of editing and revising. Editing would be the conventions, the grammar. The revising of ER would be the content, adding, removing, replacing, or moving something before you turn it in. Editing would be the conventions, the cups. And so for those of you that have uh, the new folders, you see that there's editing for passages, because there's going to be 2 passages in 3rd through 10th grade that are about cups with 2 S's, the ones you're used to, and the sentence boundaries. There's also going to be up to 4 points that your kids can earn on the extended essay, which is this one right here. And you see here at the bottom, once you finish, is your conclusion present? If you restated or repeated, that's called present. If you try to rephrase yourself in different ways and reflect in unique ways, and you effectively make sure everything ties together in your essay, your topic, your idea that you choose, the evidence, the explanation, the way you explode it, and the way you end it, all have specific supporting sentences, and they're very um, structured in a nice way, not formulaic, and everything adds substance, then you have a pretty good chance of taking your 3 land to 4 land or 5 land, because your kids are going to say, now I'm going to take my paper to the emergency room of editing and revising with capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, or sentence boundaries that don't have run-ons or fragments, or ARM, where you add, remove, replace, or move something in terms of a word, a phrase, a transition, a sentence, or sentences. Okay. that short answer that we talked about, how to get the two. What is the answer? A. Where's the answer? The location. So like when you quote scripture, if you say, Psalms 23:1 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Well, the Psalms 23:1 is the where is the answer? Where is the evidence? And the Psalms, the actual, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, is the actual evidence. And so, based on all the scoring guides and rubrics, they're saying we don't really need it necessarily in quotations. You can either just tell us the evidence, you can tell us the evidence in quotes, or you can just cite the evidence using your own words. So either way, that gets you a two. But remember, for short answers, there's always going to be a prompt. For extended essays, both expository and argumentative, it's going to have the word prompt. These will not be in the form of a question, but they will be technically asking a question. The short answer will always be in the form of the question. So that's why question is first, then they can think the the word prompt is going to be there, and the prompt is going to be about a specific topic. Why is the brain there? Well, I want to make an effort to brainstorm before I write my essay. You can also make a heart or a head connection because many characters are going to be talking about their point of view, their perspective, their state of mind, their state of being, their feelings and emotions. A lot of times, if it's character based, you're going to want to be able to share with the reader about some of those things because they're going to be important. And so that's why the toes is there at the bottom because your voice is your toes. The saying says, don't judge a person till you've walked a mile in their shoes, and inside their shoes are their toes. Well, the character or characters we're reading about have voice, and basically, uh, yes, there will be a topic. Are there any truisms in the passage that I need to understand? Quotes or sayings or words of wisdom. By the time I finish, will I be able to figure out a theme, a specific message that the writer of the passage is trying to tell me? Can I share my O of toes, my opinions and my thoughts about what I'm writing? My emotions in the way that they told or showed. So when you're explaining, you get GPS. You get pretty specific using what I call the 6 W's plus one: who, what, when, where, why, which, and the plus one is the how. So if all that happens, then you're almost there. The senses would be, let's learn about the characters. Let's view the world the way they do through imagery, what they see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. What are they saying? And how are they saying it? That shows their voice. Their salsa. Is there any higher vocabulary that we can see or use or figurative language that's expressed in a creative way, written by the author or written by us in response to the question? Okay. The next one is an O and an A vowel. The other type of writing response is going to be what's called an opinion argumentative. Argumentative comes from the word argument and the word argue. And your kids are going to get confused if you don't explain to them when you're putting something in writing. All you're going to do is argue your opinion. You're not going to persuade. You're just going to present what's in your head about a topic. So I have the either or statement. So if I say, right, your opinion about whether or not blah or blah. So the students have to pick one idea, whereas in the other one, informative I, expository E, your students normally are going to have two ideas because I saw most of the informative expository prompts breaking down into two sections. So don't make it too difficult. Just focus on the first section. What's the first topic? What's the first keywords that are being asked about? And have your kids answer that. Then they can start worrying about the second part. How, basically, it's like a process of the beginning of the passage and how it develops or changes over time in the passage in terms of how the theme is developed, how the plot is developed, or how the characters have emotions, or how do two things compare or contrast as they go, based on your opinion. So in the same way that you make a central idea, controlling idea, or thesis statement for informative expository, i.e., in an OA, opinion argumentative, EIO, I need an either or statement. Got to pick the idea, probably the one that I can explain the most. So the opinion statement is based on of all the evidence, once again, which evidence, with or without quotation marks, can I use as examples that will support my opinion statement, the claim that I take? And so here's a cool thing, even though C is not one of the vowels, if I take a C, half of an O, and then I turn the C backwards and make the other half of the O, you can tell your kids that kind of like hidden inside an O are two C's, that they're either going to make a claim about the first idea, the either, or they'll make a claim, an opinion statement about the second idea, the or. So that's just something that your kids can kind of add. So even though it doesn't start with an O, you can turn the O vowel into two half C's called my claim. It has to be about this, the first idea, or it can be about the second one. In order to move that two to a three, I've got to again explain, and the best way to explain it is combining in the body a combination of developing the top part of the B and developing the examples of evidence that I'm going to use and the way I explain how they tie in with the idea. And you can use examples of who, what, when, where, why, which, and how that you can find in the evidence that will help you support your opinion statement or your central idea, controlling idea, thesis statement. And in the same way that you need an ending in order to get a two or a three, if the ending is just present, then your kids can get the two. If your conclusion is effective, then they can get three as long as all of the other things are there, that there's enough evidence and explanation, and it's exploded with effective word choices and sentence structure that's well chosen and specific and relevant, because it has to be the examples that are the most relevant, not random. Okay? And again, because you can only get 3 points on the introduction, body, conclusion, on how well they're developed, organized, and explained, you can get the other 2 points on the conventions the grammar with cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling, or the content, the revising, the things that you add, remove, replace, remove before you turn it in. Um, and so there you see uh, it's how do you go from a one, introduction must be present, conclusion must be present, they must be effective in order to get a three. So I ask questions like, what original words, wow, do I need to use to make sure my struggling students can at least have an introduction present when they respond to the prompt in their introduction? What other words all of a sudden they'll become more effective if I'm using synonyms? Or what original way could I start? Are there any words of wisdom, quotes or sayings that I can use? And then you can have your correct statement, elementary, middle school, high school, or we said an claim or an opinion in the argumentative essay. The organization, how do you plan on developing it? For the information expository, I just need to know where the evidence is going to be. It would be nice in terms of the lines, scenes, stanzas, the sentence numbers, the section or the paragraph. And then you can give me the evidence with or without quotations. And for the opinion argumentative, the reason that this Y is yellow on the outside and green on the inside is you're going to use the evidence, yellow, to develop your response, use the correct examples of the evidence to explain how it all ties together as best as you can, write the conclusion, where if you're restating or repeating, that means that your conclusion is present. If you rephrase or reflect, it's possible your conclusion could be effective, especially if they remember that they can use their laces to say that everything in this essay ties together. The only other letter that I didn't mention is the U, that in order to do well on these tests now, they actually have to have a true understanding. They have to understand what kind of question is being asked and which vowels in the alphabet are the things that I need to take care of. So here you see how to get up to a five for um, informative expository or opinion argumentative. And then if you prefer a different approach, because some kids are ED, not emotionally disturbed, but they need you to explain differently. And you see that both purposes of writing, not reading, are there. Are we going to be doing expository explaining, or are we going to be doing argumentative where we just give our opinion, make a claim? And the interesting thing is that a lot of the body is going to look the same because either way, with argumentative or expository, you're going to be explaining what you think, your ideas, based on the evidence that's present in the passage. So I felt like that was helpful. Let's make things that are very difficult very easy, because those five vowels of the alphabet are connected to every type of question that your students can possibly get. So uh, I'm going to have a special on the folders and the graphic organizers. Uh, had them on sale for a little while, but um, paper and ink is getting more expensive. So what I'll do, instead of charging you $25 for those folders that you saw and $25 for the graphic organizers that you saw, because the graphic organizers, they're not just going to respond to the extended essay. I have a section in there on editing, a section on revising, and a section on reading that you cannot, if I go to your school and do a training, I'll be able to use those graphic organizers to talk about editing, revising, constructed responses, short answer, standard responses, and regular reading multiple choice questions, and all of the different types of open-ended editing, revising, short answer, and etc. So um, if you feel like you could benefit by adding these folders and graphic organizers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them for the rest of this month at $42.50 because my shipping is $7.50. That means that including shipping, you'll be able to get 25 of the 11 by 17 folders and 25 of the graphic organizers, where you kind of merge the two worlds of what are you supposed to do on the folders and how can you do it on the graphic organizers for $50 uh, each person. You'll get a class set of 11 by 17 of both of those, and I'm working on the Spanish version of those, so I'll have them ready soon. If you end up ordering two sets of those or more, then what will happen is you won't have any shipping at all. So the actually it'll have to be three sets or more, because if it's $42.50 for the folders and the graphic organizers, once you've ordered three sets or more, then all your shipping is free. So like, let's say you have 5 or 6 teachers and you're that kind of teacher that says, I don't want my students just to be on the computer, just doing everything digitally all the time. Sometimes in real life, we need to use paper and pencil. And don't be that teacher that says, I'm not going to use those folders or graphic organizers because they won't be able to use them on the tests. I'm like, well, this is October. We still have October, November, December, January, February, March, and April, 7 months to work our way through the process of answering all these questions. And so the cool thing about the folders is that I'll show it to you before we close, share the screen again. The cool thing about the folders is that not only does it have all that stuff for all the new type questions, on the bottom it still has the alphabet, because when you type and print, they're going to look like that. If you're working on paper and you let your kids write in cursive, they have to know what they look like. There's examples of figurative language. If you want to express yourself figuratively in some way, on the bottom left, there's examples, 6 different examples of how to use dialogue. Then when you open it up, because it says you do have effective word choices, then there's a little mini thesaurus here that will become very helpful. And if you look at the other side of the train, it has cups. So when you're working on editing, that's the capitalization, the usage, the punctuation where you slow sentences down and stop the sentences. The Spider-Man uses his web connect for usage to connect the subject to the predicate to have an ending. Then there's the spelling where you see, say, hear, listen, think, look it up in a book, and write the right answer. And the sentence boundaries, such as run-ons or fragments. And then the superhero penmanship or keyboarding. Remember that Iron Man is print, and so when you type, the letters won't touch, and so we need good spacing between our letters. This is called printsive, where if you have print letters that are touching, they're smashed together, it makes it hard to read, because when you type a letter, you don't want to, you'll be having a font that allows the letters to have just a little bit of space. And if you have 2 words, you push the space bar once. If you have a sentence called a period, an exclamation, or a question mark, you push the space bar twice, and then the cursive letters will be slightly slanted and all the letters will be touching. But eventually you've got to work to the uh, point where your kids can type their letters in a keyboard and print. And so I call that just the superhero penmanship. If you look on the inside, the top half of this hand is every single type of higher level reading question that could be asked about an entire passage or an entire paragraph for reading. A couple of rows of keys from because my palm is there, the different things that we can talk about. And these are all end of the year topics that will be discussed throughout the year. And then on the bottom, there's some more reading related connections, but it's also an arm where I learn how to add, remove, replace, or move something, whether it's a word, a phrase, a line, combine the sentences, making a cause and effect connection by adding or removing or replacing words or phrases or sentences so that the teeter relates to the totter correctly, that the see relates to the saw, and then adding an entire sentence to a paragraph or to a passage, replacing it, removing one, deleting it, leaving it out because it doesn't belong, or moving it up, down, or after, before something. All right. And it's cool because all of uh, these colorful bracelets are meaning something different. Green for adding something, green and red for removing and replacing something, yellow for moving or combining something, and blue for the something. What are you adding and removing, replace, removing? The S also stands for, since we're doing reading and some kids struggle, then if it's a story or a poem, a play, literary nonfiction, that's all a sequence of events. So you can think of arms this way, that actors acting it out remember more story sequence. If they're trying to paint a picture with imagery, they can use a different form of arms that artists remember more setting. In Spanish, arms would be añadir, agregar, remover, reemplazar, o mover. For actors, actores, recuerdan, más secuencia. For imagery, sentidos, artists, artistas, recuerdan, más sentidos. So whether you're doing reading or revising, I can take you to this portion for multiple choice and even for open-ended and show you how to use what this is called a revising graphic organizer. And I just finished doing a training with the teachers and students from Faith and ISD. And last week I was in another location working with teachers from third all the way to 12th grade in all subjects. And I think when I compare, it's like whenever the teachers, and somebody mentioned this in yesterday's training in Fabens, it's one thing to do a teacher training where a consultant tells you what to do and makes an effort to model how to do it. It's a completely other thing to say after the teacher training, let's spend a day with our students. So yesterday I was with fourth graders while the teachers observed and we talked about all the different levels of questions your kids can get. And I was using the folders and the graphic organizers with actual passages that I made. And on the day before, I worked with fifth graders while a different group of teachers observe. And that way they can see that my strategies are A, content specific to the new test and aligned. They're C, content specific. The A, they're very applicable because they saw me using them with their students who immediately absorbed the strategies and were able to accurately and immediately implement them. They were so practical that the kids caught on very quickly because they were student friendly. So my suggestion is to you, if you can't afford to bring me to your school, then get the CREST training where you get 100 hours of guidance on editing, revising, constructed response, short answer, and extended essay response. And those trainings are in 5 parts at $50 each, $250, and you get automatically a class set, and you'll be getting uh, online and PDF passages every single month, and from now until the end of the year if you purchase all 5. If you purchase 1 or 2, I won't, once we're done with the press training, you won't be getting any more materials, and but you will get the digital copy of the materials. And even those teachers that ordered 1 or more parts of the CREST training, most of them got some monkeys, because those little monkeys you can buy are in the shape of an S that refer to sentences or stanzas or sections, selections, summaries, strategies, all kinds of things that we connect to when we're doing the CREST training. But ideally, you're going to have me come and work with your teachers or with your students while teachers observe. And I have 3 different prices. One price for a 1 day training, $2,000. That gives you 10 sets of all of the materials for up to 10 teachers, the hard copies, what you just saw. Uh, 2 days is 1750 per day. So you'd save $500 by booking me for 2 consecutive days if you're out of town, and 3 days or more. Right now is only $1,500. And if I were you, I would take advantage of that quickly because the cost of the paper and the printing is going up so much. If I'm going to do a training with you, for 3 days, that's a lot of material, a lot of handouts, and I make all the handouts myself in color. So your teachers get class sets of the materials, your students get single copies so that they can write all over them, but those are all in color. And so for now, I'm going to keep it at $1,500 per day if you do 3 days or more. But ideally, like you say, there's nothing but better than seeing it and hearing it and having it happen right in front of you with your students while you observe. And that was one of the best compliments that I got yesterday. Was the teacher said, I've never seen a consultant who was willing to come and actually use the strategies and apply them with my students, regardless of ability level, regardless of the language barriers. I was able to make several Spanish references because I'm very fluent in speaking Spanish. Many of my materials are already in Spanish, and so I am able to add that component for the dual language classrooms where I can kind of do the concepts of the hands and the arms, and I already made my Spanish graphic organizer uh, in so that those of you who like the concept of the train and the hand and the arm for reading and revising and the hand for editing, that's already ready to go in Spanish. And I'm working on the folder to make sure that we can address the new ideas of informative, expository, or opinion argumentative essays. So if you are one of those Crest online teachers and you're seeing this and you don't have this most recent version of the folders with the word introduction on there on the top, uh, I think that's the only thing that I didn't get to add to your most recent version. If you're a teacher who ordered some of those folders or graphic organizers, just email me and let me know your order number, and I'll send you a digital copy of those updated folders that make sure it mentions the word introduction and conclusion on the extended essay, because it does say you want, if you have an ending, if you have an intro in there at least present, then you will get at least 2 points as long as the evidence and the somewhat development is there. But if you have an intro, introduction and a conclusion that's effective, then you can get the 3 on that portion. And then it just comes down to the convention. So um, I feel like these tools are very helpful to you. I don't believe in just using what you have, because if the scores every year are so low all the time, they're going to continue to be low. I mentioned this in one of my recent posts that something's wrong if the entire state of Texas in April in 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th, when they were doing expository and persuasive back then, we're getting just zeros, ones, and twos after a whole year of teaching. Well, it's because what they're teaching in most of those books is very formulaic and very repetitive. And no, that's not going to create success, because those won't be effective introductions and conclusions. So unless you're supplementing what you're using with my materials that I really try my best to make align, then you can be like most of the schools that I work with, where the kids end up getting 50% threes, fours, and fives from each reader, which means we're going to get some sixes, sevens, eights, nines, and tens, where the rest of the state, because of the structure of the programs or the content that's being shared, the curriculum, a lot of kids are going to get fives, meaning they get a 3 and a 2 from the two different readers, a 2 and a 2, a 1 and a 1, or a 0 and a 0, because something is lacking in the depth and the quality of the training. Last thing I want to say is we're in October. So in August, September, we were supposed to focus on May the Ones Be With You. How do I make sure I have a very clear opinion statement, or opinion argumentative, or a central idea, controlling idea, or thesis statement, or informative expository? October, November. May the twos be with you. Start working on the evidence and tying it to the answer. December, January. May the threes be with you. Try to EXP, explain the evidence and how it ties with the idea. And February, March. May the fours be with you. The conventions will hopefully start getting good by then, that you'll have decent grammar in your introduction, body, and conclusion. And then in April, may the fives be with you, that everything just all comes together. So just try to improve. Since we have 5 months left till the test, then just try to improve. November, December, January. November, December, January, February, March, April. since if you're in one land right now, just try to on each month, since we're later in the game, try to improve by 1 score point. But don't do an essay every week. The first time you make it through the process, you might do one essay, finger right, one essay in 6 weeks to make it through the whole process. The second essay, let's try to do it in 5 weeks. The third essay in 4 weeks. The next essay, take 3 weeks. The next essay, 2 weeks. And only after you've done that many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 essays, is when you can finally start saying, okay, I think now, because I've taken the time after each essay is finished and before the next one starts, not saying one every week because of some district timeline or some scope and sequence. All the schools that I worked with that did well, there was a focus on quality over quantity, the process over the product, and progress over perfection. So some things to think about. Email me or message me if you want a link to the folders in graphic organizing. I'll be sure to send those to you. Uh, Special, like I said, right now for $50, including the shipping, you can get them sent straight to you. And I I will include a couple of freebies, uh, surprise you with some free uh, colored samples of some different things that are going to help you also with your reading and writing journey this school year. God bless you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to Fabens ISD and all of the other schools and districts that I've worked with so far this year. Uh, my calendar is filling up quickly. So if you want something this semester, you better get on the ball quickly because we're running out of dates. If you want something next semester to once if you're applying some of these things, then have me come and show you how to implement them with your kids or to take it to the next level. I think that will help a lot. Take care and God bless you guys.